Hello and welcome to the TMC Newsroom. My name is Rich Tarani. Thanks for watching us today. This week we are up in Boston, Massachusetts, meeting with many of the companies in the area, getting the pulse of what's happening in the Northeast. And on our program today is John McHugh. He is the VP of Business Development and Marketing at Intuity. John, how are you?
Well, I'm very good, and thanks for inviting me. So I thought I'd start off by telling you a little bit about our company. We actually cover the whole world. We have major customers all around the world. We have major companies that not only depend on us for their own network, but also resell it and also use our product for managed services and managed service.
And so our product network monitoring software generally.
It's network management in general, yes. And we're mostly all channels. We have major pockets of activity going on right now in Africa and in Asia, of course the United States, some still residual in Europe. But for the most part, because we're mostly go through channels, we're not a household name. However, having said that, let me tell you a little bit about some of our customers. Some major customers in the United States, Morgan Stanley, Bloomberg. We're actually, Dell essentially buys our product and use it for their managed services group. In Europe is Bank of England, Royal Bank of Scotland, Sanofi, which is also across the water here in Cambridge as well. So there's major companies that depend on us and actually that use us, again, for managed services in this space.
John, can you give us some indication, what problems are you solving for these customers? Just list them all, of all the things that you help them with.
Well, that's actually part of the challenge that we have right now, is that there's kind of this idea that if nothing's broken in IT, they don't fix it, in a sense. And so when you talk about network management, everyone says, we have that. We're all set with that. However, it doesn't take into account the growth and everything that's going on in the last even 10 years. In fact, there's probably very little revenue any place that doesn't somehow touch a network. That wouldn't happen unless the network was there. So the networks actually are growing, the dependence on the network, the move essentially from applications onto the web and the network essentially work. Now the cloud is essentially coming out, but essentially there's no cloud without a network. But yet people feel comfortable it's not broken and don't necessarily understand what their needs are. But again, it's very much like an insurance. Most of these these companies are not in the network business. They sell toys, they sell securities, they sell news, they sell all sorts of different kinds of things, but they're not really in the network business. So the idea is they don't want to invest in something that isn't core to their business, but yet it is an enabler to their business. And the technology has changed tremendously from where it was a few years back. There are new virtual appliances, virtual devices, virtual switches on the network. Networks are being compressed. The growth essentially in the number of people that are accessing the network, the amount of volume that's going through the network is all changing rapidly. So the main thing that we say to a customer or prospect when we talk to them is, how's your coverage? Because it is about avoiding risk. That's having network manager, managing it essentially so it's there for the business to support the business. So it's about avoiding risk, really.
So really you put this in as kind of an insurance policy. You're ensuring that the speed of your applications is up to par. You're ensuring that your voice conversations with your customers are working when you're using IP communications. Your video calls are okay. The quality of the video calls are okay. That you don't have an outage due to, let's say, some sort of malicious attack, things like that.
Well, malicious attack gets more into security. We're not really getting in the security
But you would
area.
see, let's say, a flood of traffic on the
network. But for whatever you're using the network for, then you depend on it for your revenue, to do your business, essentially. You want it to be there. We essentially will assure. So we will be proactively monitoring and looking at the performance of the network, the performance of the devices, the traffic that's going through it, looking at trends, identifying events essentially that are happening that might lead to something else, and actually connecting it back to the business type of thing. So there's really two parts of this, really, or three parts, if we will. The first part is coverage. Are you covered? And most of the people that we see that come to us looking for network management already had some, but it's kind of like you thought you were covered, but you find out that the hard way that your insurance policy doesn't do that. They thought they were covered. They had network management. They invested in it 10 years ago. Nothing was broken. And then all of a sudden, they have a major event, essentially, that happens when the network disrupts their business. And all of a sudden, they're in the market for some. So it's maybe some awareness to make sure that you're covered. Make sure if you have new devices. Make sure that if you're using a lot of virtual appliances and virtual devices, you're covered with that. And that's part of your network management. The second part of that is, and is really part of the economics that are going on, is the shift from how much you pay for software, how much you pay for hardware and Moore's Law and that type of thing, and how much work you have to put in, or what's the personnel cost of actually managing your network. So in this market, there is areas where you can get free software.
Right.
But it's only free until you start using it. And,
right.
and if you have to have very highly paid personnel to do that, and a lot of them to keep it up and running, then the cost essentially of operating and the operational costs of your network actually far exceed what you would cost in the end. So we not only want the coverage essentially to make sure that your insurance, so to speak, is in place, but we want to reduce the amount of effort that it takes someone to actually perform that network management.
Right.
Okay. Because again, you're not in the network business. You're in whatever business you are. So,
sure.
So it's getting the job done, getting efficiency. So we have a major focus, and you'll see later on as we talk, on operational efficiency. And so, for instance, there are some competitors that will sell you, give you some software away, and they'll sell you pieces of software. Maybe a piece for this, a piece for that.
Sure.
This does this job. It's like a toolkit type of thing.
Right.
Well, from a management, I think that that's a nightmare, to essentially give multiple different tools to a bunch of different people who will spend their time essentially doing these things. We're talking about is automating it, is essentially taking the burden off per personnel and putting it on the software that we provide essentially to automate whenever is possible managing of the network. So we'll talk about automation. We talk about operational efficiency, reducing the costs. When we're out in the world competing against with these major companies, we win a lot of deals, a lot of them. If we get invited, if we get into a proof of concept, we almost always win those deals.
Great. Now, one quick question is, you had news, and I want to make sure that we talk about that.
Okay.
As well, right?
Let me just, I'm going to get to that in a second.
Sure.
Yeah. This is what I'm leading up to.
Okay, excellent.
So when we go to these customers, after we win the customers and say, so tell us about why we win. And we're proud of our technology, we're proud of what we do, but they said, it wasn't the technology. The technology is good. If it wasn't, we wouldn't have picked you. On the other hand, the major reason that you won is because the ease of use, the operational efficiency. You essentially take the burden of this from us so we can actually go do other things. Management is pressuring us to accomplish a lot more. And this allows us to essentially take that burden off of it so we can actually go and be more productive for the company. So it's that whole balance about, it takes 70–80% of my budget in IT to keep the lights running. We're trying to reduce the amount of money it takes to keep the lights running,
right,
so that more of it can be innovation for the company. So we made an announcement about a week ago, and we call it really the operational efficiency release, in the sense that the features and the pieces that we have in it fall into the categories. Is it coverage in terms of what is it covering in terms of your network, or is it making it easier essentially for you to do business? So we do talk about a lot of those features. We talk about, in that announcement, we announced the ability to look at logical devices and physical network devices at the same time, being able to put those in the same topology, making those live, essentially, which was kind of a problem before. The virtual people, systems people could see what's going on the virtual side. The network people could see the physical network, but the other them could see both of them, so we can merge those together.
Is that across VMware and any other platforms as well?
Yes, it's VMware. We also essentially, so we'll actually be able to see and manage from a network perspective virtual devices and things like the Cisco 1000V, okay, which are part of the key implementation in a lot of places in terms of bringing the physical and virtual world together type of thing. There's others, essentially, we talk about charting, advanced charting, so that we can, on the fly, essentially, take all this wealth and depth of information we have and make it, visualize it, so you can actually implement it. You can understand what the information is telling you and can act on it type of thing. So a lot of the features on this release, we'll talk about coverage. And the first instance, essentially, is coverage is now we'll cover these network devices for you and the network switches, virtual switches for you. And we'll also give you tools, essentially, to make it easier for you to control your licenses in your network environment for the software. We'll make it easier.
So there could be a cost savings there, right?
There's cost savings on a lot of this because someone would have to do this.
Right.
You can provide management dashboards, management tools.
But you also can reduce the number of licenses in case you have extra ones.
Oh, absolutely, because
Right.
it spreads them around and you can put them where you want them,
Right.
so you don't have to buy them. And it gives you inventory of your not only inventory of your physical network and your virtual network, but inventory of the licenses you have, and those can be moved around on the fly type of thing. So the announcement talks really about how we reduce the amount of effort that it takes, essentially, to drive people's networks. So that's pretty much what that's about.
Great. Well, thanks so much for your time today. This was great. Great
Well,
to meet
thanks
you.
for having me.